The night air on Earth was cooler than Serinith had anticipated. She stood on a hill overlooking the town below, her heart pounding in her chest. This was her first time setting foot on the planet, and it was nothing like the simulations she had studied. The lights from the small human settlement flickered, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with the sterile worlds she was used to. There was something almost inviting about it. The mission was clear: observe the humans from a distance. No contact, no interference. Serinith's people had been watching Earth for decades, but they remained undecided on whether the humans posed a threat, or if they were just another primitive species on the edge of space. She wasn't meant to engage with them, just gather data and return. But tonight felt different. The air was filled with an electric energy that she couldn't quite understand. People moved in strange costumes. Laughter and excitement echoed through the streets, and strange symbols adorned doors and windows. It was chaotic. Unlike the calculated, emotionless societies she had grown up in, Serinith adjusted her disguise, her appearance cloaked to blend in with the humans. She wore a long, dark coat and a hood that hid most of her features. She had been briefed on Earth customs, but nothing in her training prepared her for this spectacle. What were these humans celebrating? As she walked down the hill toward the town, Serinith's curiosity grew. Everywhere she looked, humans were dressed in outlandish attire, some as creatures with fangs, others as skeletons or monsters. Were these real? She couldn't tell if she was looking at actual beings or just part of some elaborate ritual. The energy of the night was intoxicating, and she found herself drawn further into the town, where the laughter and music grew louder. Humans were gathering in groups, exchanging strange candies and indulging in sweet-smelling food. There were no signs of hostility, no danger like she had been led to expect. They were celebrating. Serinith slowed as she entered the heart of the town, her senses overwhelmed by the sheer strangeness of it all. She stopped by a group of humans, their faces painted to look like skulls. They noticed her but simply smiled and waved before returning to their revelry. No suspicion, no fear. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and that's when she saw him. A tall figure, with a greenish hue to his skin and large, dark eyes. He stood apart from the others, leaning casually against a lamppost, observing the festivities with a relaxed demeanor. Serinith's heart skipped a beat. Was he one of her kind? Had another member of her species already infiltrated Earth? She hadn't been briefed on any allies here. She watched him carefully, her pulse quickening. He wasn't behaving like the others. His movements were too fluid, too controlled. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and their eyes met. He smiled. Serinith's breath caught in her throat. No human would smile like that at a stranger. It had to be him, an alien. Her curiosity overpowered her caution, and she began to move toward him. The crowd seemed to blur around her as she focused on the man. No, the being who stood so confidently in the midst of the chaos. Her mind raced with questions. Was he part of her mission? Could he provide information she wasn't privy to? As she neared him, the figure pushed off from the lamppost and approached her with an easy, relaxed gait. When he was only a few feet away, he stopped, looking her up and down with a smirk. "Nice costume," he said, his voice low and smooth. "You blend in better than most." Serinith blinked in confusion. "Costumey?" She glanced down at her cloak, unsure of what he meant. She hesitated but played along. "Thanks. Yours too," he chuckled, and the sound sent a strange thrill through her. "I'm Alex," he said, extending a hand. His voice was warm, welcoming in a way that disarmed her. "You're new around here, aren't you?" Serinith looked at his hand, unsure of what to do. She had studied human greetings, but this felt different. Hesitant, she reached out and shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "I am," she said softly, her mind racing. "It's my first time here." Alex nodded, his smile never faltering. "Well, you picked a hell of a night to show up. Halloween's something else, isn't it?" "Halloween?" Serinith repeated, confused. "Yeah," Alex said, gesturing to the crowd. "It's a holiday. We dress up as monsters, aliens, whatever. It's all in good fun. You've got a great look. By the way, very mysterious. Serinith's heart pounded in her chest. Aliens? This was all a game to them? They didn't even know how close they were to the truth. She glanced around at the other humans in their costumes, realizing that this was all part of some bizarre ritual, not a sign of an invasion or contact from other worlds. Still, there was something about Alex that intrigued her, his confidence, the way he spoke to her as if they were equals, not enemies. She had come to Earth expecting danger, but instead she had found something entirely different. "Do you want to walk for a bit?" Alex asked, breaking into her thoughts. Serinith hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Something about him pulled her in, and for the first time, she didn't feel the need to resist. As they began to walk through the town, the night unfolding around them, Serinith couldn't shake the feeling that her mission had just taken a very unexpected turn. As they strolled through the lively streets, Alex led Serinith away from the bustling crowds and deeper into quieter corners of the town. The music and laughter faded into the background, leaving just the sound of their footsteps on the cobblestones and the cool rustle of the autumn breeze. Serinith felt her senses heighten, aware of everything, the slight chill in the air, the glow of the moon above, and Alex walking beside her. Her mind raced with questions. She had come to Earth expecting hostility or indifference from humans, not this strange celebration of creatures that resembled her kind, and certainly not this human, with his easy smile and confident presence. Serinith had never been so close to one before. She had studied them, observed from afar, but never had she spoken with one face to face. "First time celebrating Halloween?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. Serinith nodded, trying to maintain her composure. "Yes, I didn't know what to expect. It's wild." "Right," Alex said, his grin lighting up his face. "We get to pretend for a night. Be someone or something else. Everyone's in on the joke, but there's always that one person who goes a little too hard with their costume." Serinith couldn't help but glance at him as he said that. His costume, while less elaborate than some of the others she had seen, was still convincing. She had truly believed for a moment that he might be another visitor from the stars. His face was painted in green, with exaggerated, alien-like eyes. The rest of him, though, was unmistakably human. "Do you often pretend to be something else?" she asked, genuinely curious. The concept of humans disguising themselves for fun was foreign to her. In her world, everything had a purpose, an order. This kind of whimsy didn't exist. Alex laughed softly. "Not really. Only on nights like this. Sometimes it's nice to step outside of yourself. You know, pretend to be someone braver or weirder. But I think you've got that down already." Serinith raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said, looking her over with curiosity. "You don't seem like you're from around here. And I don't just mean the costume. There's something different about you." Her heart skipped a beat. Did he know? Had her disguise somehow failed? But Alex's expression remained easygoing, his eyes twinkling with amusement rather than suspicion. He wasn't prying, just observing. "You're very perceptive," she said cautiously. Alex shrugged. "It comes with the territory. I'm a writer. I like to notice things, and you stand out." Serinith didn't know how to respond to that. She wasn't used to being seen. Her mission was always about blending in, about observing without interference. But now, standing beside Alex in the moonlit streets of this human town, she felt seen in a way she hadn't expected. It was unsettling and intriguing. They walked in silence for a moment, the quiet between them surprisingly comfortable. Serinith's thoughts were racing, but she found herself wanting to know more about him, more about this human who made her feel so different. "So," Alex said, breaking the silence again, "if you're not from here, where are you from?" Serinith hesitated. She'd been trained for moments like this, to evade, to deflect. But something about Alex's openness made her want to answer honestly, even if only in part. "Far away," she said softly, her eyes flicking up to the moon. Much farther than you might think. Alex followed her gaze, looking at the moon with a thoughtful expression. I figured, he said, his voice quiet. You've got that far-away look about you, like you've seen places most of us can't even imagine. Serinith's heart raced. Could he truly sense something? Or was it just his imagination, his writer's mind weaving stories from her silence? Is that a bad thing? She asked, genuinely curious about his thoughts. No, Alex said with a smile. Not at all. It's refreshing. Actually, most people here are caught up in their own little worlds. It's nice to meet someone who looks like they're seeing things from a bigger picture. They stopped walking, now standing on the edge of a park, illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. The sounds of the Halloween celebrations were distant now, a faint hum in the background. The park was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaotic energy they had just left behind. Alex leaned against a tree, watching her closely. You never answered my question, he said. Where are you really from? Serinith's pulse quickened. She had to be careful now. Revealing her true identity wasn't an option, but lying to him felt wrong. She couldn't explain it, but she didn't want to deceive him. Let's just say, I'm not from here, she said softly, hoping the ambiguity would suffice. Alex chuckled. Fair enough. I guess we all have our secrets. He didn't press her further, much to her relief. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flask, offering it to her. Care for a drink? It's just cider. Serinith shook her head, but smiled at the gesture. I'll pass. But thank you. They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, gazing up at the stars and the brilliant moon above. Serinith felt the weight of her mission pressing on her, but it seemed to fade the longer she stood beside him. She had come to Earth expecting to gather data, to observe humans as potential threats or curiosities. But Alex was neither of those things. He was different, in a way that made her feel more connected to this strange world than she ever thought possible. So, Alex said, breaking the silence once more, what's your big secret? Serinith blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? Well, Alex said with a grin, you're mysterious, quiet, and you've got this whole not-from-around-here vibe going on. I figure there's more to you than meets the eye. Serinith smiled despite herself. Maybe there is. Alex's grin widened, and he pushed off from the tree, stepping closer to her. You're intriguing. You know that? Serinith's breath caught in her throat as he stood inches away from her now. There was something in his eyes, something warm, inviting, and so very human. She had never felt this way before, and the sensation both excited and terrified her. I've never met anyone like you, Alex said softly, his voice filled with curiosity and admiration. Serinith opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She had no idea how to explain what was happening between them, or why she felt such a strange pull toward him. Alex took her hand, his touch warm and gentle. You don't have to tell me everything, he said quietly, but whatever your secret is, I'm glad we met tonight. Serinith's heart raced. She had come to Earth expecting danger, but she had found something far more complicated. As Alex's fingers laced through hers, she realized that, for the first time, she wasn't sure what to do next. The night had a strange way of pulling them closer, both physically and emotionally. The moon above them glowed brighter, casting an ethereal light over the quiet park. Serinith and Alex sat side by side on an old wooden bench, the sound of distant laughter and Halloween festivities fading away. There, under the stars, it felt like they were in their own little world. Serinith had never felt so exposed, yet so drawn to someone before. Her mission, her species, her entire reason for being on Earth, it all seemed to fade into the background as she sat with Alex. The way he looked at her, the way he made her feel, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had been trained to observe humans, to see them as primitive creatures driven by emotion. But Alex was different. He was kind, gentle, and warm. So, what do you think of Earth so far? Alex asked, his voice soft as he looked up at the stars. Serinith hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. It's different, in ways I didn't expect. Good different? Alex smiled, his eyes twinkling in the moonlight. Yes, she admitted, feeling the truth of the words as they left her mouth. Very different. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the tension between them growing, but not in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. It was more like anticipation, like something was building that neither of them could stop. I don't meet people like you often, Alex said, turning his gaze toward her. His expression was thoughtful, almost serious now. There's something about you. I can't quite put my finger on it. But it's like you're not really from here. Like you're seeing everything for the first time. Serinith's heart raced. He was getting closer to the truth than she had expected. She glanced away, trying to steady herself. The connection between them was undeniable. But how could she explain herself to him? How could she make him understand what she really was? Alex gently touched her arm, and Serinith felt a jolt of electricity run through her. His touch was soft, tentative, and yet it sent a wave of warmth through her body. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, feeling emotions she had never been trained to deal with. "You're right," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not from here." Alex's expression didn't change. He didn't pull away or react with fear, as she had once imagined a human might. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his curiosity deepening. "I knew it," he said with a small smile. "I knew you were different." Serinith swallowed hard. She wasn't sure how far she could go without revealing too much. But Alex didn't seem to need a full explanation. He was looking at her with such admiration, such interest, that it felt like he understood, at least on some level, without her having to say it out loud. "I don't belong here," she said, her voice trembling. "I came for a reason, but it wasn't this." Alex's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean? I wasn't supposed to—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. How could she explain that she was never supposed to make contact, never supposed to feel anything for a human? But before she could say another word, Alex gently cupped her face in his hand, his touch sending another wave of warmth through her. His eyes searched hers, filled with understanding. "You don't have to explain," he said softly. "Whatever brought you here, I'm glad it did." Serinith's breath hitched in her throat. No one had ever made her feel this way, this seen, this understood. And the way he was looking at her, like she was the only person in the world, made her heart pound in a way she couldn't control. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Alex continued, his voice low and soothing. "But right now, all I know is that I'm here with you, and that feels right." Serinith's chest tightened. She had never been trained for this, for the feelings that were now surging through her. She was supposed to be an observer, a silent witness to humanity, but now she was tangled up in something much bigger, something she couldn't walk away from. Alex leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "Is this okay?" he asked gently, his eyes searching hers for permission. Serinith's heart raced as she nodded, unable to find the words. The rational part of her mind screamed at her to stop, to remember her mission, to remember that this wasn't what she had come here for. But the other part of her, the part that was experiencing these strange, overwhelming emotions for the first time, pushed her forward. Their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss, and Serinith's world seemed to shift. The touch of his lips against hers was gentle at first, but it quickly grew more intense as the connection between them deepened. She had never experienced anything like it before. It was like a surge of warmth, of life, rushing through her entire body. Alex pulled her closer, his hands resting on her waist, and Serinith felt herself melt into him. The kiss wasn't just physical, it was something more, something deeper. It was like they were sharing more than just the moment, like they were connected in a way that went beyond words. When they finally pulled apart, Serinith was breathless. She looked up at Alex, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to steady herself. He smiled at her, his expression soft and filled with wonder. "I've never met anyone like you," he said quietly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "You're incredible." Serinith felt her throat tighten with emotion. She had never expected to feel this way, to experience this kind of connection with a human. But now that she was here, in this moment, she couldn't deny it. "I don't know what's happening," she admitted, her voice trembling, "but I don't want it to stop." Alex's smile widened as he gently pulled her back into his arms. "Neither do I." They sat there for what felt like hours, wrapped up in each other's warmth, the moonlight shining down on them as if blessing their connection. Serinith knew she couldn't stay. She knew her mission was calling her back, that her time on Earth was limited. But for tonight, she let herself forget about all of that. For the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged, like she had found something worth holding on to. And as she rested her head on Alex's shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, she realized that maybe her mission had been wrong. Maybe humans weren't the threat her people had believed them to be. Maybe there was more to them, more to him, than she had ever imagined. The stars had begun to fade, and the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. Serinith and Alex remained in the quiet park, sitting together on the bench, wrapped in each other's warmth. The festivities of Halloween had long since died down, leaving the town in a peaceful slumber. It was a perfect contrast to the emotions swirling inside Serinith. Her mind was racing. The night had been unexpected, a whirlwind of emotions and sensations she had never anticipated. She had come to Earth as an observer, detached and impartial. But now she was anything but. Alex had shown her something she never thought possible: connection, understanding, even pleasure. And yet, her mission loomed over her like a shadow, a reminder that her time here was running out. As the light of dawn began to chase away the remnants of night, Alex stirred beside her, pulling her from her thoughts. He looked at her with sleepy eyes and a gentle smile, his hand still resting on hers. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft in the early morning quiet. Serinith nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She had to leave. Her mission was never meant to involve personal connections,
especially not ones as deep as this.
But how could she walk away now? How could she leave him after everything that had happened? Alex seemed to sense the conflict in her. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly. "I get it. We just met, and maybe it was just a one-time thing. But I'm glad it happened." Serinith's chest tightened. He was wrong. It wasn't just a one-time thing.
It was something more.
Something that had shaken her to her core. But how could she explain that to him? How could she make him understand the weight of her decision? She stood up, feeling the cool morning breeze against her skin, and looked up at the fading moon. It felt surreal, like a dream she wasn't ready to wake from. But reality was closing in, and she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. "I'm not like you," she said softly, turning to face Alex. Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Alex tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. "What do you mean?" Serinith took a deep breath. This was it, the moment she had been dreading. She had never revealed her true identity to anyone, let alone a human. But after everything they had shared, she owed him the truth. "I'm not from here," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not from Earth." Alex blinked, his brows furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" Serinith's heart raced as she stepped closer to him, her eyes searching his for any sign of fear or rejection. "I'm from another world, another galaxy. I came to Earth as part of a mission, to observe humans, to see if your species was a threat." Alex stared at her, the confusion in his eyes deepening. "Wait, what? You're an alien?" She nodded, her stomach twisting with nerves. "Yes. I didn't mean for this to happen. I wasn't supposed to make contact. But then I met you," and she trailed off, unsure of how to explain the depth of what she was feeling. How could she tell him that he had changed everything, that he had made her see humans in a way she never thought possible? Alex stood up, running a hand through his hair as he processed her words. "So, you're telling me that all of this, The whole night was just part of some mission. No, Serinith said quickly, her voice filled with emotion. It wasn't like that. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't expect to meet you, or to feel the way I do. But you have to understand, I'm not like you. I can't stay. Alex looked at her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. So what happens now? You just leave? After everything we shared? Serinith's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She had never intended to hurt him, but she knew there was no way to avoid it now. Her mission called her back, and staying on Earth was impossible. But how could she leave him after what they had experienced together? I don't want to go, she admitted, her voice breaking. But I don't have a choice. My people, they're waiting for me. If I don't return, they'll come looking. Alex's eyes softened as he stepped closer to her, reaching out to take her hand. What if you stayed? What if you didn't go back? Serinith's breath caught in her throat. The idea of staying on Earth, of building a life with Alex, was both terrifying and exhilarating. But it was impossible. Her people would never allow it. And even if she could stay, what kind of life could she lead here, constantly hiding who she truly was? I can't, she said, her voice filled with regret. It's not that simple. My people would come for me. They wouldn't understand. Alex's grip on her hand tightened, his expression filled with determination. Then let them come. We'll figure it out. You don't have to do this alone. Serinith's heart swelled at his words. The thought of staying, of defying her mission and living a life with him, was more tempting than anything she had ever imagined. But it wasn't realistic. She couldn't drag Alex into the dangers that came with being a part of her world. I wish I could stay, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But I can't. My people need me, and I can't risk putting you in danger. Alex's expression softened as he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I don't care about the danger. I don't want you to go. Serinith felt tears welling up in her eyes as she buried her face in his chest. She had never felt this way before, so connected, so vulnerable. But she knew that staying was impossible. No matter how much she wanted to be with Alex, her duty to her people came first. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I have to go. Alex held her for a long moment, his grip tight, as if he could keep her there through sheer willpower. But eventually, he loosened his hold, stepping back to look at her with sad, understanding eyes. I understand, he said softly, his voice filled with sorrow. But just know, I'm glad I met you. I don't care where you're from. You made this the best night of my life. Serinith felt her chest tighten as she looked up at him, her heart breaking with the weight of her decision. She leaned up, pressing a final, lingering kiss to his lips, savoring the warmth and tenderness that she knew she would never feel again. One more hug from both, a strong one, a bit more than just a hug. They both felt it, as their hearts accelerated, but she pulled away. She forced herself to take a step back, her feet carrying her away from him despite every part of her screaming to stay. Alex watched her go, his expression a mixture of sadness and acceptance. As Serinith disappeared into the early morning mist, she looked up at the fading moon and felt a strange sense of peace. She had come to Earth expecting danger and hostility, but instead, she had found something far more profound. She had found love, connection, and a glimpse of what it meant to truly belong. And even though she had to leave, she knew that this night would stay with her forever.